Hi, everybody. Okay, we are looking at the shifters of supply. We did not cover this in class or briefly covered it in class on Friday, so I want to give you a little bit more time with it. Remember, when we're looking at demand and supply, it's a matter of perspective. If the thing we're looking at is impacting the consumer, whether or not they want to buy more of that product, how much they like it, that's going to impact demand. But if it's impacting the input or the cost of the good, then that's going to impact supply. And generally speaking, if it costs more, it's harder for them to produce it, then they're going to supply less because fewer businesses are going to be able to make a profit with those high costs. And if it costs less, then more businesses are going to jump into that marketplace and try to get their share of the profit. The supply is going to go up. And that's the general rule with the shifting of supply. Here's what it looks like. Remember, when we're talking about a determinant or a shifter of supply, we're talking about an outside factor that's not price. Remember, price just moves us along the curve, right? Along the curve, that's a change in quantity supply. But a change in supply means that every single price, businesses are willing to supply more. And normally this means more businesses are entering the market, or businesses that are in the market are providing more goods and services because they have more profit potential, right? That would be a shift to the right here. Key factor here, notice when we're shifting to the right, it looks like we're shifting down. That's why we make rightward facing arrows. I really don't like how they did it here. Rightward facing, because that shows an increase of quantity being sold at every price. And then we shift this left, that's a decrease in the quantity being sold at every price, right? A series of new bullet points there. Okay, hopefully that helps. Let's get into these determinants. The first one, and probably the most, not probably, excuse me, definitely the most common is a change in the resource price, right? So, for example, oil is used to produce gasoline. If the price of oil goes up, then the costs are rising for producing gasoline. And the businesses that produce gasoline are going to be able to produce less with their budgets because it costs more money to do so. So supply is going to shift left. Okay, and vice versa. If the price of oil falls dramatically, then all of the gasoline producing companies are making more profit. And so they're going to produce more goods and services, or more gasoline, sorry, and supply is going to shift to the right. Another common resource that we use is people, labor. So if the labor pool unionizes and demands higher wages, and they get them, higher wages, then that means it's going to cost more to produce the same product. And so some businesses are not going to be able to provide that product, and so supply is going to shift left. They're going to supply less because it costs more to supply any at all. And some businesses are just going to opt out. And vice versa. If we decide to hire all people that have no experience and fire everybody else, and the labor costs go way, way down, then we're going to supply more. Supply is going to shift to the right because businesses are able to make more profit as a result. That's the change in resource price. This is also any input. Like if I'm making pepperoni pizza and the price of pepperonis rises, then the cost has gone up to make a pepperoni pizza. So I supply less. Or if I'm making cheeseburgers and the price of cheese fell dramatically, well, now the cost of making cheeseburgers has gone down, so I'm going to supply more. Inverse relationship between costs and supply. Make sense? Hopefully. All right, let's try one out. Milk prices increase after news reports that empty cartons can be modified and used as weapons in battles over territories, lunches, and pets. I was feeling very funny when I read this. All right, draw a graph that shows the impact of this on the latte market. That's important. We're looking at lattes, not milk. If we're looking at milk and price increase, we just move it along the curve. But when we're looking at lattes, milk is an input. We need milk to make a latte, right? But milk isn't a latte all in of itself. And so if the price is going up for milk, then of course it's going to cost more to produce lattes. When it costs more to produce lattes, some coffee shops are just going to decide to not sell lattes because they can't make a profit off of them. So let's look at that in an actual marketplace here. Got my little marker here. Latte is the market. And so because the price of an input or a resource is going up, cost is rising. Cost up arrow. When cost rises, supply is going to shift to the left. So we draw our two arrows here. We put in a parallel supply curve, like so. I label it S2 because it's our second supply curve, and this is now my active supply curve. Let me switch colors here. We have a new equilibrium point right there at our new supply and our old demand. We dash over and we put in price. What happened to price? Price rose, right? Because we're supplying less. There's fewer available. That scarcity drives up the price because demand is the same. We dash down and my quantity fell, and that makes sense. There's less being supplied in the market. You can only sell what's being supplied, or you can only buy what's being supplied. So quantity falls. Supply shifts left. Price rises, quantity falls. When the cost rises because milk price went up, the market of lattes. Okay, let's keep rolling. Next up is technology. You know, technology only goes in one direction, and that's up. Technology only makes us more and more and more productive, right? So whenever you have a new technology, no matter what it is, you can assume that supply is going to shift to the right because it's going to decrease the cost of production. All the time. Technology makes supply shift right. So let's take a look at one. New artificial intelligence technology has proven to be incredibly more effective at counseling than humans. I just know that they care, said one patient. So we're going to draw a graph that shows the impact of this on counseling service market. I'm going to cough real quick because I have a cold. So hold. There we go. Okay. So what's the impact on the counseling service market? Let's look at it. So we're here. We have counseling service counts. It's going to take a while to type out with the mouse, so I'm just going to stop. If there's a new technology that makes it more productive to be counselors, and robots and artificial intelligence is doing it, we can shift the supply curve to the right, like so. Because technology. Technology only moves supply in one direction. We put in our supply curve. We call it S2. Now our active supply curve is S2, and our active demand curve is still D. We have a new equilibrium. I'll do that with a different color so you can see it. At the intersection of my new supply curve and my old demand curve, dash down, my quantity has gone up, which should make some sense. Businesses are supplying more into the market, so quantity rises. My price has fallen because there's more counseling available, more competition drives down the prices, so price falls. That's the supply curve when technology impacts it. Okay, let's keep going. Another one is taxes, and taxes also have an opposite, which are subsidies, which we'll talk about in a second. But taxes go up. It increases the cost of doing business. And so businesses are going to supply less because it's more expensive to be in this market. And if taxes fall, then it decreases the cost of doing business. And businesses are going to supply more because it's cheaper to produce the good and there's more profit potential. So an increase in taxes shifts left, decrease in taxes shifts right. Flip that and reverse it with a subsidy. A subsidy is just the government giving businesses money to offset costs. So when the government subsidizes a business, like corn, for example, then those businesses do not have to pay all of their own costs because the government's paying some of them, right? So as a result, when the subsidy comes down, they have fewer costs. So we're going to be more profitable. So supply is going to shift to the right. However, when subsidies are taken away, when the government takes their money back, now those businesses have to increase their costs. And when costs go up, the supply is going to shift left. As a result, it's all logic, right? So let's try one out. After frequent and effective lobbying, the government subsidizes American motorized scooter business so that they can compete with the South Korean Skutes. I don't know if that's a real thing. All right, draw a graph that shows, sorry, cold. Draw a graph that shows the impact of this on the motorized scooter market. All right, let's try this out. So we know that the government is subsidizing these things, but what's going to happen? So we go here, we got American scooters. AMSC, boom. They're subsidizing American scooters. It means that the cost of making American scooters is falling. The cost is falling. The businesses that make American scooters are going to increase the amount they supply, and new businesses are going to dive in. They're like, hey, I can make a scooter make profit because the government's going to pay some of my costs. The supply is going to go to the right. We draw on our two arrows. We put in our parallel supply curve, S2. We have our new equilibrium right here at our new supply curve and our demand curve. Where they intersect is where quantity demand and quantity supplied are equal. We dash over, it gives me price. We dash down, it gives me quantity. Pow! Price has fallen because there's more competition, more of these in the market, so it drives down price, and quantity has risen because we're supplying more to the market, so more are going to be bought and sold, as long as demand stays the same. Okay, hopefully that made some sense. Let's keep rolling. It's probably the toughest one for people to remember. It's not really very common, but let's jump into it. You have to imagine that most businesses have options. They can produce various goods. They don't have to just produce one thing forevermore, right? They're flexible. So sometimes you have two different types of goods in the marketplace that one business can produce. And so if there's a price of something else that rises, then businesses oftentimes will supply less of the current good that they're making, supply more of the good that has a higher price because they can make more profit doing it. So for example, if I was currently producing these kind of generic sunglasses down here, right? That's what I'm making. And I see that the demand is rising for these super cool wooden framed, like super awesome sunglasses. Everybody's buying them. I'm like, I can produce those. Price is up, so I can make a ton of profit off of it. What's going to happen? Well, I'm going to supply fewer of the generic sunglasses, and I'm going to supply more of the wooden sunglasses. And a lot of sunglass businesses are going to do the same. They'll supply fewer generic and more of the fancy wooden ones because they want to take advantage of this trend. So we call this a price of other goods. The price of something else goes up, like, ooh, I can make profit making that instead of the thing I'm making. So price draws in producers. And so we'll supply more of that good and less of this good. Hopefully that makes some sense. Other ones. Producer expectations. If producers expect the price to rise in the future, it's going to go up in the future. What are they going to do right now? Right now, they're going to supply less of that in the future, right? Because they're worried that, I'm sorry, blah. Right now they're going to supply less because why would I produce more if I expect the price to rise in the future? I'll wait until the price rises in the future, and then I'll produce more of the good then. If I expect the prices to fall in the future, right? I expect them to go down, then I'm going to try to sell more today. Just like the consumer who's looking at the marketplace and says, hey, if there's going to be a sale on Friday, I'm going to buy less today, right? You got to flip that on its head for the producer. Producer says, hey, if there's going to be increased profits later, then I'm going to produce less today and more later so I can take advantage of that higher price. And if I expect the price to fall in the future, which is bad for me, right? Flip that perspective, then of course I'm going to produce more today so I can sell it at that higher price and less in the future, right? So again, kind of flipping that consumer expectations on its head. Price rises, then I'm going to produce less. And if price is going to fall in the future, then I'm going to produce more. All right, hopefully that made some sense. Let's try one out. Market projections show that stuffed animal bear sales are slowing after a recent mauling. Yeah, there's a mall, bears. And that this will likely be accompanied by a drop in price. What's going to happen? Okay, so I expect animal bear sales to start slowing. I expect the prices to fall in the future. What am I going to do now? And we're not assuming that they're producing up in stock and everything like that. Prices are higher now than they're going to be later. What am I going to do? But I want to sell them at that higher price to make more profit. So I'm going to produce more now. Let's take a look at it. Got our animal market here. We'll call it stuffed bear. Stuffed bear market. And I know the price right now is higher than it's going to be in the future. So what am I going to do now? Right now I'm going to supply more. I'm going to supply more because I want to take advantage of the higher price until the bears go away. So I have to maximize my profit today so that I can pull out in the future and still be okay as a business. Supply is going to shift to the right. We call this S2. We have a new equilibrium. That equilibrium is at the intersection of demand and my new supply. We dash over, we have price. Price has fallen, it's gone down. And we have quantity. Quantity has risen, it's gone up. There you go. Supply shifting right in that scenario. All right. I believe this is our final shifter or determinant. Woo, yay. All right. So, number of sellers. This is super common sense. Hopefully, it makes sense for you. If there are more businesses that want to sell this product, supply is going to go up because there's more of them selling it. Sorry. And if there are fewer businesses, fewer sellers, supply is going to go down because there are fewer businesses selling it. It's really, really common sense. There's nothing complex to it. So let's take a look at an example. Let's say private universities are increasing dramatically in number. Simultaneously, consumers expect a recession and corresponding drop in income soon. Draw a graph that shows this impact on the private university market. Wait, what did you just do, Mr. Lang? Yikes. Well, I gave you one really easy one. We have more private universities that are being built, so we know supply is going to go right. But look, notice the second one here. That's not supply. What is that? That's demand, right? That's consumer expectations. Consumers expect, keywords right there. Consumer expectations. We expect that we're going to lose money soon. What's going to happen? Well, if I think I'm going to lose money soon, am I going to choose this fancy schmancy private university? Probably not, right? Consumer expectations, I expect that I'm not going to have enough money, so I'm going to stop spending today. So now we have two things happening. We have supply shifting left, and we have demand shifting left. Yikes. Let's see what happens. All right, so we go down here and put in private university, private univ. And then first we start with supply. It doesn't matter which one you start with. Just draw them and let it figure it out for you. So supply is going to shift left. I'm sorry. Whoops. Supply is not going to shift left. That's my bad. Uh, they're more increasing dramatically in number. So supply is going to shift right, increasing the number of producers or number of sellers. Supply shifts right. We draw on our parallel supply curve, S2. Okay. And at the same time, demand is shifting to the left because people are losing money, where we're going to lose our jobs. So I draw leftward arrows from demand. I draw my new demand curve. Okay. Now where's my equilibrium going to be? Well, it's going to be in my active curves. My active curves now are S2 here and D2 here. So my equilibrium is going to be at the intersection of those two curves, somewhere like this. I dash over. What happened to price? Price fell dramatically. This should make some sense. When supply shifts right, price fell, right? Price fell because of that. And when demand shifts left, price also fell. And so, of course, the balance is that price fell, right? But what about quantity? It looks like quantity, if I dash down, quantity stayed the same. Quantity is actually question mark. It's determinate. Why? Well, when supply shifts right, quantity rose. Right? When supply shifts right, there's more universities in the market, meaning there's more being bought and sold. Quantity went up. But when demand shifts left, quantity fell, right? Fewer people are willing to buy it, so fewer are being bought and sold. So one went up, one went down. What happened? We have no idea, right? Quantity is what we call indeterminate. There's no way to tell. If it went up and then down, here it looks like it stayed the same, but that's just because I drew randomly shifting curves. I need to know exactly how much these shifted. We don't get enough information in these examples to figure that out. So we say price fell and quantity is indeterminate, or IND. period. So trust your shifts. Even if you have double shifts, trust them. And then in the event that price and price goes in the same direction, then we know what happens to price. But if price went up and then price went down, then it's indeterminate. Same with quantity. Little hint here. One of the two is always, 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 always going to be indeterminate when you have a double shift, either the price or the quantity, right? Because when demand shifts, price and quantity move in the same direction. But when supply shifts, price and quantity move in the opposite direction. Figure out what the opposites are, and that's your indeterminate factor. Okay, let's wrap this up with a tidy little bow. Final thing, remember, a change in price is not a change in supply. A change in price does not shift your curve. A change in price is just the graph, right? The graph is price and quantity. This supply curve here represents the relationship between price and quantity. So if the price of the actual good goes up, if it goes from 15, right, at this point, and it goes to like 30 at this point, then what's happened is the quantity supplied has risen. It's your law of supply, right? If price went up. But any of those outside factors that are not the price of the good will cause a shift in the curve, especially if it's impacting the cost and therefore the profitability of that product. Awesome. Guys, we're going to try one more double shift just because we're having fun. Here we go. Needles are found in strawberries, creating a panic in the strawberry market. Yeah, you don't want to eat a needle. Simultaneously, at the same time, that's an important thing. Otherwise, we don't have a double shift. If they're happening at different times, we do one and then we do the other. At the same time, the price of strawberry fertilizer is cut in half. What's going to happen? Well, first, we have a change in taste because needles. That's demand. Next, we have a change in the price of fertilizer, which is an input, a resource, so that's resource cost. That's going to impact profitability. It's a change in supply. So our change in demand is going to be bad. It's going to be going down because nobody wants to eat strawberries with needles. So we know demand is going to shift left. But if the price of strawberry fertilizer is cut in half, it means it's cheaper to make strawberries. Supply is going to shift right. Demand left, supply right. Let's take a look. So we know demand is going left. Doesn't matter which one you start with, but I recommend you do both. D2. Then we know supply is going right at the same time. S2. We have our new equilibrium here. We have our new price. Price went way down. We have our new quantity, but quantity is going to be question mark. Why? Because I know if I jump over here, when supply goes right, I know the price is falling. When demand goes left, I know the price is falling. And so the sum of that is that the price is going to fall. I also know when supply goes right, quantity rises. And when demand goes left, quantity falls. And so the result is quantity is indeterminate. Price fell, quantity is indeterminate unless you give me more information. Okay, little hack for you. If this doesn't make sense, if this is confusing, draw two graphs. Draw two graphs, write out what happens to price and quantity, and then wherever they offset each other, that's indeterminate. Friends, I hope this was helpful to you. Those are the final concepts you need to know for your test. Enjoy your studying. Peace. I believe in you. Always have. Always will.